Are you ready to get woke? Welcome to the Woke as podcast with your host, Alex Lazarev.
Boom! Hello! We're back again. Cool. I like how you did the turtle move there. So it's the Woke as podcast. I'm here with Mr. Yash.
That's me.
What's up?
That's me.
I want to say, for the record, he's super chill. This might be one of the chillest podcasts we ever had. We're down in Vilcabamba. I would run into this guy just here and there, I think for like a couple years, right? I would just kind of see you around by the river. I would just be walking along and he'd be there. Oh, hey, what's up? And we'd have a quick chat about, I remember once we had a quick chat about, because he's super ripped. I don't know if you want to show off or not, but he's ripped as fuck. He's like, most people are just fat and out of shape compared to this guy. You don't want to be with your shirt off. We were going to do this shirtless, but I would just look so out of shape. I thought, no, we're putting clothes on. I had to bully him. I said, I'll give you $5 if you put on a shirt. And he said, all right. $5 and a chocolate ball. That was the bribe. Isn't that right?
Yeah, my self-esteem's really high after he said that. So.
Yeah, this podcast, if it's not just to bring the joy of connecting with the Infinite One Creator, it's also about boosting the self-esteem of the guests. That's a big part.
That's why I'm here. Yeah, the more views, the more my self-esteem gets boosted.
I won't feel good unless this is viewed by a lot of people. So this guy, I don't know that much about him. I've been learning more and more slowly over time. And a year ago, I wouldn't have been able to hang out with him at all because he's so chill. I would have just perceived him as like either not liking me or boring. But now I've realized that many people who are actually quite advanced on their path are by default at peace and have nothing to say or prove. And I do believe he's in that category. Does that boosted up your ego even more?
No, but yeah, you spoke on behalf probably of other people because sometimes I can sense, yeah, there's this distance they want to, and so it's nice to hear what you just said. It's nice to hear that.
I mean, an interesting story that people might find interesting. I went to do David Dieta's weekend course, but a few years ago, right? And so there's all these dudes, and a lot of them were with their girlfriends. And I was quite, this was back in, I think, 2014. And I was still quite excited. And yeah, I'm working on myself and tantric sex and all these things. And so I was shocked at how one of these guys, I remember coming up to him and I was like, hey man, you seem like a cool dude, but you never say anything. You just stand there and you're super quiet. And I'm like, and I'd like to connect with you. And like, are you shy or what's going on? And he was just like, no, I'm good. And he was just, and then I realized now it's like those dudes were just more comfortable in their being, and they were just happy and present. So they didn't need to be outgoing or talk to people, or even they were just kind of like okay with themselves, I think. And I was the one who was like, I want to be friends with everybody. So it's kind of funny.
I can relate. I mean, of course, that was my life for I don't know over a couple decades. So right, I just forget. Like I forget. Yeah, I totally could relate to that.
So you were excited.
Yeah, it's like please look at me. What the hell are you looking at? You see, it was this dichotomy of superior ego with the inferiority complex, and I didn't know it at the time. But yeah, it's just a trip to look back on that, and yeah, it was just a mess. It was fun, but it's that stage is finished now.
That's kind of how I feel about me as well. Like I was doing stand-up comedy for a long time, and it was literally getting up on stage and being like, please like me, please love me, please laugh at my jokes, and always having to be like the funniest guy in every situation, even when it was not on stage, having to be the funny guy, having to get that validation. And the same thing when I was a dating coach, same thing. It's like, So yeah, it really is funny when you get out of that and you let the ego sort of melt away a little bit into the presence and the bliss. It's literally like looking at a different person. It's hard to imagine that I thought that was me. Do you know? So it's kind of weird.
Well, yeah, I realized it never really was me. I was just imagining that was me, and so that imagination's finished now. But it was, it was all. We're here to have experiences, and there's all these stages we have to experience. Otherwise, I couldn't enjoy the state I'm in now if I didn't enjoy that state somehow. And there's not a contrast, And I just know that's a very restless state, and so I can feel the calmness now more because I remember the restlessness. So it's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. It all is. And one of the things I always say, it's just as long as we're moving in the right direction, it's all good. You know, it's only if you're not, if you're just stuck in the story and the bullshit and you're not making any progress, then that's something to be a little concerned over. But even that's just temporary, right? Everything's temporary.
Yeah, we're never really stationary. The consciousness is always moving. Actually, it's always moving upwards. Even if it feels it's going back, there's a deeper. It's happening in the deeper upwardsness. That it's just coded in our being, so we can never really go backwards. It can appear to be, but we're always going upward.
That definitely makes me feel a little bit better. But what if somebody's literally going down the dark path? So like drugs, booze, treating people like shit, like really being a total asshole. Surely they could be going backwards. Because there are people, just as we can go up, there's people who can go down.
Yeah, I had a stint from maybe 12 to 15 when I was getting high all the time, and I thought I was a badass. I liked the movie Scarface, and I used to go out and mimic him when before I would get into a fight, so, I mean, I didn't kill people and torture them, but I can relate to that darkness. But what it did, that suffering is what actually makes the attention start to turn inside and start to want to be free of that. So that's what I mean. On a deeper level, it's all for the good, because without that suffering, I wouldn't grow. So I need that, and the universe gives that to us. How much we want of that, how long it takes, that's karmic. And for mine, it didn't last too long. I just hit bottom.
Okay, you want to play rough? Right. Come on. I take your bullet. It's
one of my favorite movies too. Yeah, I totally loved it. Yeah. I did. But again, that says something about us too, doesn't it? Where we were at. But interesting. So this is an interesting point you brought up. So maybe potentially, even when we're somebody, it may look like they're completely descending into the darkness. If you zoom out, because that going down to that bottom is eventually going to lead to more of a bounce back up, that's still part of that journey that's ultimately going up, even though we all have these ups and downs. So in that way, it kind of makes sense that ultimately we're still evolving.
Yeah, there's no choice in it, actually. Whatever habit, let's say you have a habit now you want to break, just try to not break it. Just say, no, I'm going to do whatever it is. And just try to not break the habit. It's like we're not in control of any of this. There's an appearance that we're in control and we're making decisions and we're choosing good, choosing bad, but at some point we realize that's also an appearance happening in our greater self. And so on one level, this can go into a deep subject, but you start to think, ponder, how much self-will do I really have? Like, this whole show is just going on regardless. But I'm afforded the experience to imagine I'm an autonomous individual who's actually doing things, and it's fun. But I know it's not really true. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a real head fuck, because I've been in that state of absolute oneness with all, and then for a while it was really just an unfolding, and I was just watching, and there was nothing to decide. It was just. Everything just was what it was. Everything was perfect. And there was not even a person making decisions. There was no person at all. But then when you're back in the person, you're like, no, I can definitely pick. Do I want to fly here? Do I want to fly there? Am I going to do that? Am I going to do that? So it seems very real. So, I think both are real. It's one of those divine dichotomies, right? It's like you're not doing anything and yet you are, it's a trip.
Yeah, there's an appearance that we're doing something. That state you described is still going on right now. It's just there's more attention going into the mind that's imagining it's doing things. So there's a sense that I'm doing something, but really it's still happening in the imagination. So yeah, they're both real, but this is more like relative realness. It's changing all the time. It's not stable. Whereas the space in which that's happening, it's always the same. It's always stable, and we can always everything's happening in front of that. Otherwise, we couldn't articulate about it. You couldn't say, I was in the oneness and now I'm out. So there's something really that's not in the oneness or out, because otherwise, we couldn't comment that you're in or out. And yeah.
Well, the thing that doesn't change is the consciousness, but it seems that we can still affect the quality of the experience, how we choose to perceive it, and seemingly some of the choices that we make. Because, like, for example, next week I could get on a plane and fly to London, but I could choose to fly to New York, and they're not the same. And I'll have a different experience in London than I would in New York. And somebody has to make that decision. Or it seems to be the person.
Right. I understand. But I would say again, something is the life force, you can say the unmanifested that manifests as the life force in these bodies. It's kind of moving in the way it's deciding for us what we're going to do. So if you wanted to go to New York, or what was the other place?
London.
You're going to feel, and it may be the last moment before you get ready to buy the ticket, but there'll be some force that's telling you which direction to go. Now, one could say, okay, but I could fight that, and even though I'm feeling to go to London, I'm going to choose to go to New York. Okay. But that would still be happening in the greater scheme of things, because then you would feel how that feels to not listen to how the life force is moving you, and you probably wouldn't do it again. And then you just wouldn't be able to. You'd be like, okay, I'm not going to play this game anymore. So I understand what you're saying, but there's something that's running this show, You can just feel. There's a reason why we're sitting here filming this. I can't say I chose to be here when you asked me, and you can't say you really chose to ask me. There's something else that's running this thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's like, and I've been tuning into this more and more. It's just like when we think we are getting an idea, are we really creating any idea, or are all ideas and thoughts already there, and we're just based on our vibration, and we're just getting access to certain thoughts and ideas. So just like when I was talking to you and I just got the download, like, you should interview this guy. And that was it. It was just like it just came, and I just knew that was the right thing to say, which was like, hey, you should come on the podcast. That was it. There was no real process for doing it. It just kind of arose. That was it.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's something to look at is the people that are overzealous about saying, oh, I choose this, I choose that. But ask yourself, who gave you that thought? Yeah, where did the thought come from? Are you going to choose? So if you like somebody, if you're attracted to a girl, where did that feeling come from? Where did that thought come from? Try to flip that. And if you feel yourself kind of repulsed towards someone, try to flip those things around. You can't. So there's a big karmic thing that's going down here that chooses that's we're getting the download, certain thoughts, certain feelings, certain desires, like, why do you desire some things and not the other? Try to choose that. Yeah, it's really non-volitional on a larger level, and there's great freedom from that. Some people may get depressed of, oh wow, I don't really exist. Yeah, you don't really, but there's a great it's the ego that don't want to feel that and believe that. But it's a happy death after a while, because just so much tension goes. You're just here, Yeah.
I came up with this sometimes when I because in the last few months, I had this profound samadhi of just no person and just only God. And sometimes, and I've been on a big kind of downwards, spiral where the person and the ego and the thoughts started to come back in. And for a while, they just weren't there. It was just the presence. And they come back in, and then I went to Mexico and I had some shitty experiences, and then I kind of went down and worry and fear and all these other shitty emotions, and then now I'm coming back up again and getting back in that state. And sometimes when I actually think about the experience of when I was not a person and I was just the infinite one creator, certain those truths just keep flowing through me. The truth, it just comes. And I was thinking about how to sort of how it's directly linked to our happiness, how much we're choosing to associate with this person that we all are to a degree, and consciousness. And I came up with an analogy which I thought was interesting, which was because everybody wants to be happy. If you ask anybody, what do you really want? And they say, well, I want $1 million or whatever it is. I say, well, why do you want $1 million? You think that'll bring you happiness or peace or something like that. So I just thought it'd be interesting to say to somebody, okay, imagine I have 2 pills. In my left hand, I have a red pill. We'll call it the money pill. So someone comes to me and says, oh, well, I want to be rich. I said, great, I have a pill here. It's a magic pill. If you take this red pill, you'll have $10 million in the bank account in your name. Nothing else, just the money, which means you could lose it, you could do whatever with it, but it's just the money. Doesn't guarantee you'll be happy, but you will have this money, okay? But I have another pill. It's in my other hand. It's a blue pill. And if you take the blue pill, you're going to wake up to your true nature, which means you'll realize that you're not a person. You're a consciousness itself, and with that will come absolute liberation, happiness, bliss, peace beyond imagination, and it's permanent. Until you leave the body, you're always going to have this. So what do you want? Do you want the blue pill with absolute peace and the remembering of your true nature, or do you want the pill that will give you $10 million? And guess what? Some people are going to take it. Some people are still going to go, I'll take the money. because the person who really believes that the happiness comes from the money is going to want to take the money. Even though I'm saying, no, the other one is all the peace, all the liberation, all the joy, a lack of fear, immortality, like knowing that you're immortal. That's in this one. No, give me the 10 million. Some people would be smart and go, no, give me the other. Forget the money. I don't know, but I just think it's a funny little story. I don't know.
Yeah, the people who are going to want the money, it just means they're not yet ripe for this. So even though you explain, they're just words. Oh, bliss, happiness, peace. They're concepts in their mind. They can't relate to that. There's no resonance. But with the money, with sex, with cars, there's some resonance. There's some affinity with that. So then, therefore, based on their level of experience, of course, they're going to go for that. So it's a question of time, and you can't do all that in one life. There's just not enough time. So, yeah.
So I realized we kind of jumped straight into chatting because it just happened that way. But actually, I wanted to, as I started my talking about you, I just wanted to give a little background into my experience and then my realization that you were somebody worth talking to. So let's back up and let's just get a little bit into like who you are and your story. So I think telling the beautiful listeners just your name. I think for a start, I don't think we've even gotten to like who. Let's just ask this: who are you?
Yash Lynch. Yash Lynch. Or do you want? Is that like who am I? And is that what you're asking?
Let's go further. So we have the name now. That's just a good start. What about let's get a little about your sort of like your humble beginnings. Like who were you sort of before you got on the path to awakening? What was your setup? So for me, it was like a comedian and dating coach and all these things, and then it got a little bit deeper. But yeah, who were you before? And then we can get into like sort of how your spiritual kind of path kicked off and some crazy shit that happened and etc. But give us the background story.
So
you can hold this now too, because now you're taking over.
Okay. So my life was just debaucherous from the time I came out of the womb until probably mid-30s. A lot of health issues. I had so many health issues, and they were all very deep-rooted chronic conditions, so there was no... I couldn't get any reprieve from doctors or from anything, really. Or any herbs, any of your best treatments, I couldn't really get any, I couldn't get better from because it was so deep. And the labels that the doctors gave me was like Tourette syndrome, OCD, anxiety. And then I had a chronic spine problem. My cervical spine was super degenerated because one of the tics, which is what Tourette's is. It's an obsessive compulsive disorder that usually manifests as physical tics or noises or whatever. I had both, but I would crack my neck over and over and over again, and do it hundreds of times a day for decades. So what happened is I destroyed my cervical spine basically, and so and then the two would play off each other. I would have the tic that cracks my neck, and then I would feel the pain in the neck, and then that would make me tic more, and it was just insane. I was just torturing myself all the time. So, and then my parents put me on all these heavy medications, these psychotropic drugs, just stuff that's heavier than street drugs. It's just very bad for you, especially when you're young, and because your mind, your brains, everything's very pliable, and you're just affected worse than if I started taking that when I was older. So I went through that, and then. And then I when I was 12, I stopped all that. I became old enough to where I'm like, I'm not going to do that anymore. This is crazy. So then I started getting high, mostly with marijuana, and I really liked that. That really maxed my personality traits out. I thought I was cool after being super sick and uncool for so long. So I needed to go the other way for a while. But then I hit bottom with that, and I went to a rehab because I think it's because all the meds they gave me before that, I didn't have much of a grace period left when I started smoking weed. I think I was just already burnt, So I did that. I got out of the rehab, and then I joined the Marine Corps when I was 19. And it was so crazy in there. You see, one of the ways when I wouldn't tick is when something was so, some circumstance was so extenuating, or it got my attention so deeply, like jumping out of a plane or having sex or driving a sport bike real fast. Then my mind I wouldn't be caught up in that habit to tick. So I watched Rambo, and I thought really that I could be him. And so I joined Marine Corps. And then I used the Tourette's to get out a couple years later because it really sucked, And then I went to California to be an actor, and that was nice for a little while. But after 7 years, I'm like, this is just ego. I just wanted the praise. I wanted the people to, give me some attention and say I'm good. And so when that hit bottom, that's when the spiritual journey began, so to speak. I went to the Hidden Valley Ashram in Escondido, California. Yogananda started. And then from there, I just kept seeking and searching, went to India. And I was still trying to heal my health problems. And so I went to Thailand and Indonesia, getting all this specialized body work done to try to help my neck, and a lot of different Ayurvedic treatments in India. And then I got deep into raw foods. I was fruitarian for over a year. I was liquidarian for a half year. I got deep into water fasting and dry fasting. And I was just trying to heal. I just wanted to heal, but none of it worked. It helped. It did help. And they're good tools to use in conjunction with some strong spiritual practice. But unless I realized that I'm not this body, and unless that identity started to break, or dissolve, I couldn't get well. And that was the blessing of these health problems, is that nothing worked. I was literally forced to know who I am beyond the mind and body. But these other tools were necessary to help me with that, because the identity was so strong with the mind and body. So therefore, then raw foods are good. They helped me. And then the last tool I found after that was plant medicine. And I got deep into mushrooms and San Pedro cactus and ayahuasca and kambo and wilca. And that really helped. That really helped because it switched my mind off and allowed my consciousness to basically turn to look at its own self. And then I said, okay, how do I stay here? Which is a popular question. People say, well, I had it, but then how do I not lose it? And what happens is, after a while, you realize it's just another idea. The idea that says, oh, I have it, and the idea says, oh, I lost it. That's also happening in front of you. And so, yeah, just through all these tools, raw foods, plant medicine, just a healthy lifestyle too, like not doing things that's causing stress. And because then the more stress I have and the more bad habits I have, so to speak, then the more my attention is going to be in the mind fueling that. So then I'm going to appear to feel like I've lost contact now with my consciousness. And so somehow the intelligence of the being you just stop doing that. You kind of modify your life in a way that supports consciousness, so to speak. So yeah, it's a big subject, that question. I wrote a book which is almost 200 pages that describes that better. So for me to summarize it, it's a little difficult, but I feel I gave a okay summary. Yeah.
So interesting. So you're one of those cases where you were kind of thrust on the spiritual path by physical pain, like literally, like you had no choice. So I'd like to hear more about that. So you never actually thought, oh, I'd like to learn the truth of my being, or I'd like to have more peace, or none of those things. It was literally just like it was literally to get away from the pain. Is that because I'd like to hear more about that. And how did you even give us the what were you actually going through when you were like, okay, this, what was the decision or the thing where the point that you snapped and went, okay, I'm going to go to this? Because most people who decide to go to to a temple, it's because they're already on the path and they want to, they're asking, who am I? And they want to go down this. Sounds like you didn't come from that space at all. So let's get a little bit more into how that sort of happened.
Yeah. It was both. Predominantly, at least at the beginning. I mean, initially it was the pain. It was the health, because it was just nonstop 24/7. It was just, and I had already tried enough things to see that nothing works. But at the same time, there was some natural sanskara in me, some tendency toward the spiritual path, and I had some boons from God, you can say. When I was 12, I had some deep, peaceful, spiritual, just spontaneous experiences for no reason. So I had a taste for that. But the health situation definitely motivated me and made it quicker for me to seek that than if I didn't have that. But obviously, I had to already have those tendencies in me, because not everybody with Tourette's does that. There's so many other ways you can go. You can just be doped up on tranquilizers, or there's other things you could do, but something wouldn't let me do that because I felt like when I would go those routes, I dabbled with them, but I would feel I lost consciousness. I wasn't not. Fell asleep, but I could feel my presence was dulled. So there was always something that wanted to shine in a stable, balanced way. I couldn't articulate at the time and say, "Oh, that's spiritual pursuit." But in retrospect, now I can explain it like that. So that was there, but it was just more unconscious. The thing that was super conscious is I had to get healed. And then what happened though is when I started to get better physically and in my nervous system, I realized, wow, I'm still not satisfied. You see, and then that's when it really dawned on me, like, okay, you got to surrender. That's when I started becoming attracted to the Advaita teaching and the path of Agani, and really recognize, really seek out these beings who look like they're embodying this, and to start listening to them and pay attention to them, because I felt like that's what I wanted. I'd already had enough. I'd experienced every desire I wanted to experience. I had decent health at the time. Still wasn't cured. I know what it felt like to have money and sport bikes and girlfriends and jet skis and snowmobiles. And I'd done every little thing I wanted to do. But yet there was always something was missing. And even the so-called benevolent things like helping people, so to speak. See, people can get trapped in that for a long time, but that can also be ego. One has to discern and feel if there's a you here that's trying to help people and feeling attached to helping people, because then you're going to be attached to the response. You're going to want them to see that you're helping them, and then you're going to feel bad if they don't. And so there was a period of a couple years I taught yoga in Bali and in the States, and that was the first book I wrote where I got to feel what it felt like to be praised as a yoga teacher and selling my book, etc. And then I had to stop that after a couple of years because something felt I didn't deserve it. It took a couple of years before that really grew to where I'm like, okay, I got to stop. Because, it's easy to kind of just don't listen to that voice, just, okay. Let me just keep distracting myself with my work. And look, they're all appreciating it. Is so good. I must be helping. So I played that game for a while, but at some point you can't escape this inner intuitive voice. It's just a question of time. And so then I stopped and I said, okay, I need to go more deeper and really get more stabilized in this to where it felt more authentic now when I share with somebody. And so, a long answer.
That's interesting. What was the point, or was there a point where it kind of dawned on you that there was a whole other reality out there that was completely away from the self? The opposite of like getting more and getting more positive feedback or more money or all those things that most people crave, right? Attention and success and all these things. What was the moment? Like, did you have a clear moment where you were like, oh, none of that actually makes any difference. None of that is actually going to take away my physical pain. It's not going to make me happy. And there's some greater spiritual truth or goal, like a real moment where things shifted and you realized that everything that the way you'd been kind of going through life just was not the way forward.
Yeah, there wasn't a one and you're done type moment. It was a growing, it was a growing and an evolving for the mind and the body. And it just kept growing and growing. And actually that never ends, there's something always that's refining itself always in the body and mind. And that reminds me what you said before about you had this spiritual experience and then you felt like you got caught back up in the ego and then you were trying to come back. So there's this integration that never ends really. It just keeps refining. And it gets to the point where it's so subtle it doesn't even matter anymore. There's not these huge things like that, And then you realize, oh wait, but that's really not even who I am either. This is just part of also the play that consciousness is experiencing because it's in this form. And so because if all that stopped and there was no friction at all, we wouldn't exist. We wouldn't even know we existed. So. But there's a few beings, I've read like Eckhart Tolle, Ramana Maharshi, where it was just a very short, condensed period where they flowered and realized who they were. But still, even them, the refining goes on too. It's just I didn't have such a sudden, realization. It was more step by step. I've had both. The slow. Just as I go more into service and helping others, and the ego's just getting smaller and smaller, and you're just like, okay. But then also sometimes these massive, like experiences of like, holy shit. The last one was really intense. But interesting. Okay, and then have you had? And that's interesting what you say that for you it becomes less of these big ones and it just becomes more of like a flow and this subtle integration. I mean that's what's been I've realized just in the last few months. It wasn't the big peak experience, it was the integrating it into life and taking that knowledge and bringing it into the everyday, just being present and bringing in that awareness into being a person, going around and doing your shopping. And do you know what I mean? It's like, okay, yes, you're the infinite one creator in this temporary human form, but yet you're still the human form for a while, and you need to, here you are. You got to do stuff. You know what I mean? There's this. You're here. But have you had these crazy experiences also that were just off the charts, like holy shit? Or have you had those as well? Because I know you've worked a lot with plant medicine, so you must have had some profound realizations. And have they been mainly working with plants, or have you had awakening experiences totally
totally sober, sitting there staring at a wall, and then suddenly, boom, you're gone, or, And I like hearing crazy stories if you have any juicy ones.
So when I was 12, I went to church, and I went after, at the end of church, they say, does anybody want to come up at the end, and they'll lay hands on you and pray. And somehow I was open at that time. I don't know why. And so I did. And then it was maybe 2 days later, I was just hit with the most deep peace that I can't even tell you. And I couldn't say curse words anymore. And I would experiment with that. I would just saying the word damn, I would feel some prick, and I'm like, what's going on? Because I'm 12 years old. And I wanted to tell everybody I loved them. I just wanted to tell everybody I loved them. And so what happened is my mind came in and said, man, nobody's going to recognize you after this. What's going to happen to your friends? You're going to, and this great panic and fear came in, and I started praying really hard for God to take that away from me. And finally it did vanish after, a few hours of praying that it would go. And then I remember a few days after that, I was trying to get it back. I'm like, what the hell did I just do? So that's one example of, I wasn't on any medicine or plant medicine at that time. As far as the plant medicine, yeah, I mean, mushrooms. One that sticks out, though, is when I did San Pedro, there's been a couple of those where, man, I mean, it's, words fail to try to describe this stuff, but, okay, vision-wise, I saw I saw the elemental nature of everything. Like anything I looked at, I would see the whole webbing on the energy body behind these physical forms. That's not a big deal, that's just a big deal. But what happened, the real thing was, I felt like I dissolved. I couldn't find any reference of like who I am or even where I am, but yet at the same time there was some feeling that I'm here, but it was so not individual that the pressure, it was, I don't think you can stay like that too long. The mind, like everything felt like it was just cracking, and I had to do some tobacco to really get grounded. So yeah, I've had those experiences. I don't put a lot of emphasis on them though, because there's still an experience. There's still an experience happening inside me, so to speak. And they come and they go. So I'm there to watch them come, and I'm there to watch them go. But it's not the I that most people are speaking from. It's I have to use words somehow. So did that.
Well, I mean, I know what you're talking about. I mean, in my last Satori, when I say I am, I no longer was talking about the person. I was talking about consciousness. That's the I am. It's just all the totality of being, and that was me. And only in recent weeks and months, as the mind has come back, now I is kind of this person, but deep down I know I is actually. You know what I mean? So it's both. They're both true. Yeah, I've heard other people also describe that some guy was telling me he had this great mushroom experience where he was just all of it, and then he slowly felt the ego coming back in, and he was like, "No, fuck off!" And then it comes back in, and you feel it coming in, like, "Oh, here I am," all with all its issues and thinking and worrying and all this kind of stuff. Yeah, it really is bliss when you don't have any of those attachments, because all the problems come from being a person. That sense of individuality is actually, that's where all the issues are. When you're just consciousness, you don't have a problem. There's no problems to be had. So you're hardcore on the healing path, and me too. For me, it's trauma from my mom. Was highly abusive physically, psychologically. I didn't really have any love or support. So a lot of my physical problems really, it was trauma stuck in the body, and I'm still working through it. I'm 40 now and I'm still working through it. So I'd like to hear more about any like big sort of revelations or understandings that you've had that are profound that maybe some people wouldn't expect, specifically when it comes to the link between consciousness and healing the body. Like how was you waking up the ultimate truth of your being freed you from from the shackles of physical pain and suffering.
So the more dedicated I was to my spiritual practice, which was for me, it's really simple. It's not like when I was in SRF ashram, and I even forgot now how many lessons there are, and you keep going through the steps, and then you get initiated into Kriya Yoga, and then you keep going from there and there. That's just another path. There's nothing wrong with it. But when a lot of beings, you can feel that actually behind our mind, there's just this still presence. It's here right now. It's here all the time. So that was my spiritual practice, is just to put my attention on that vibe and stay there like that. Now, how does that factor in with the whole healing and physical? So what happens when I'm in that? When my intention's there, my intuition starts to wake up more. When my intuition wakes up more, it starts to tell me, not from the lower level of the mind and pros and cons and all that. It starts to tell me, guide me what it wants me to do. So then if I had problems with my my neck or my nervous system, it would guide me. It would just somehow, it would show me. I would read a book, or I would open up something online. I would meet the right person. Somehow there would be more space and openness so that I could actually attract those things that will help me in these bodies. And so yeah, it all works together. But I remember before, when I was just totally in my mind and ego, I would just, I'd be trying to heal myself, but I'd be going about it in the wrong way all the time. I would just, I wasn't really going anywhere. I'm just going in circles, because, for example, with the raw foods, I had no idea that I was laying on my bed. And this was after some time. When I was really just trying to practice on the presence, but I couldn't because my tics wouldn't let me. I just kept moving and twitching around, and I was so restless. But something happened. I was quiet. I was just laying on my bed, and I had the picture in my mind start juicing. That's where it started. And so that's an example of something came from deeper inside, gave me an answer. You see, it wasn't, I'm just trying to point out the difference between when something organically comes from inside, as far as guidance goes, as opposed to something that's researched or thought too much about. Not that doesn't have its place either, Yeah,
well, that's a huge point. That the often the most profound teachings come from within. It's not. There's nothing anybody can tell you that's going to be more perfect for you than your own intuition, your own wisdom coming up. So for you, just being able to enter that stillness, to be able to listen, that was huge. Yeah. And that's where meditation and other such practices, or anything that really gets you to that stillness, like yoga or breathing practices, or for some people, who knows what, rock climbing or jumping off a bridge with a rope tied to your ankles, but whatever. But something that gets you to that point of just boop. That's cool. Any other learnings or revelations specifically when it comes to healing? Because you sounds like you had some pretty serious health stuff going on that you've overcome without any Western official medicine, right? You didn't use any official medicine. So what else, if you had to come up with like two more main things for somebody listening right now who also has physical pain, or they've tried all this other stuff that isn't really working. How else could they harness the power of the spiritual path to help them heal?
Okay, so I do, and I have been for some time. I don't advertise too much, but I do consultations with people, mostly Skype, because I'm living in a town here with 5,000 people, so there's not that many people here to do that with. But so what I do, I have some tools, call them tools. I have that I go over with people who have health issues, and somehow they feel some resonance with me, and something inside says I might be able to help them, and so we end up getting together. So I'll just start with like the water we drink. I'm a really strong proponent of being hydrated and alkalized, and so what I do, for example, is I drink, I have, let's say, so at night I take 6 mason jars, I fill them up with the best quality water I can. I have a structuring unit that I use to structure the water, because most of the water we get, even if it's good quality, so to speak, it's still dead, So this structuring unit has, quartz and different minerals and sea vegetation in it, so the water passes through there and it gets more energized and structured than it would if it didn't. And then I have some super high quality food grade essential oils that I use to put in each jar with the water. And I let it sit all night, and so what happens is it just marinates and structures all night. So then in the morning, that's my breakfast up until so if I get up at 6, it'll take me a few hours to drink these 6 quarts, and the electricity and frequency and vibration that my being has after drinking that, I can't even tell you. I mean, I'm high, because most food and everything, just the chemistry we get is it just vibrates low, and the cooked food and even the raw foods, it's just something led me to drinking these tonics. That's what I call them, that I just explained to. So that's a tool. And then diet. That's a big subject. We have to look at that individually, and because there's just no one diet for all, and it's contingent upon so many factors. But the bottom line is diet's super important. And the thing I try to encourage someone is that they develop their own bodily intuition, so that you'll know, your body's going to tell you, not your mind based on some concepts, raw vegan or paleo or whatever. These are concepts. Body has no concepts. It tells you what it wants. It knows the chemistry that it's lacking, and so it'll tell you that. So we work on that. So for diet, also plant medicine. This is a super accelerative good tool. And so if people are open to that, and they're in a place where they can do that and not get in too much trouble, then we talk about that. And then exercise, yoga, because the physical body, it needs some exercise. It helps break up that energy and stress, and things flow better, and you just feel better. So, and then basic lifestyle, which is common sense, but we lose it somehow. Like going to bed at a decent time, getting up early. Family and relationships, are they stressing you out? Should you get away from that? Your job, is it causing you too much stress? Does something inside want to leave that? And just not being in situations that's making you really acidic, and because stress makes you really acidic inside, and then things don't flow good, and you're not happy. And so basic lifestyle, and then spiritual practice, which depends on your character and temperament and constitution. Some are more devotional, some are more Ghani type, where you realize the formless that's already here. So these things, it becomes really individual, and so these are the main tools. Though you asked what are the main tools, these are the main tools. Also, certain herbs and stuff depending on your situation, but. I like to keep things really simple, because the body can actually fix itself and heal itself if you let it tell you how, and if you stop, if you're in a conducive situation for it. Being in toxic situations and circumstances, this is a big deal, and this causes a lot of pain and stress, and also bad habits. If you're addicted to alcohol or too much addicted to sex or something, and it's that can cause a lot of problems. How are you going to heal when you have a certain habit that's just overriding any healthy things you do? So,
Yeah, I mean, I found that often the most powerful advice. It's stuff that we've heard before. It's fairly obvious: good food, good water, good sleep. Have a spiritual practice. But people don't follow that. They hear it, go, yeah, sure, and then they keep eating shit and going to bed at midnight after having a big pizza. You know what I mean? And it's like, you shouldn't be eating that pizza at 11:30, but a lot of people are eating the pizza at 11:30 and then going to bed, and that really messes you up. And I find for me, whenever I really focus on any area and excel in it, it really helps all the other areas. So, for example, when I'm doing fasting and really making sure that my stomach is empty, so I don't eat any food after 6, generally speaking, I don't have a problem going to sleep at 10 or 11 because I'm empty. And then so of course then I'm waking up early because it was easy to fall asleep, so now I'm waking up at 6 or 7, and then of course I have all this time to do my spiritual practice because I'm up at 7. Right. You see, but when I'm bad and I have that, I shouldn't eat this, but what the hell, I'll eat my dinner at 9:30. So then I'm farty and I ate a little too much, or I mix the food, so now I'm not going to bed till 2. So now I'm getting up at 10 o'clock in the morning. I don't feel as good. And by the time I get into my spiritual stuff, now it's 1 o'clock. Now I feel I've wasted half the day and I don't get shit done. So everything's really, really interrelated. And so it's almost like when you're really dedicated to the peace and the bliss, and you're really getting into the habits and having that discipline, they all just kind of feed on each other. So it's really but I say to people, if you're really just starting out and you're really not doing all these things, just pick one thing and really try and master it. Whether it's just getting, making that habit, like you said, of having a bunch of really, really high quality water in the morning. Just that one thing will change someone's life. Or cutting out all the really bad food, or starting to go to bed earlier. But just I would fix one thing, and where you really feel the effects, and you're like, yeah, this is awesome. Then move on to the next thing, because some people they'll listen and then they'll be, fucking, I'm going to do everything perfect. And it's like, well, you won't, because you're a human being and you can't do everything perfect, and don't bother trying. But yeah, it all comes down to those basics, those basics: good sleep, good food, good water. Yeah, it's really not it's not rocket science. So at this point, because I see you're here in town, you go to the river. One of the things I notice about you is you really spend your time doing what makes you happy, right? You're always by the river meditating. You really take it. It seems like if someone were to ask me, "What's this guy's full-time job?" I would say, being happy and just being blissed out. That's what you spend most of your time doing. So, is there any sort of goal for you personally? Do you have I want to do this, or I want to get to this level, or are you just taking it day by day, being in your bliss? What do you see sort of in your future, if anything?
That was another tool I forgot. Nature. Yeah. Go to the beach, go to a river. If you're in a city, go to the park if that's all you have, or go to a national forest or something. The support from nature is definitely, that's an important tool that you can add to this full spectrum lifestyle. And like he said, it's about full spectrum. It's just a whole lifestyle, and it doesn't require so much discipline. You don't have to. It becomes a joy to do it. Once it catches, you just, like you said, it's just common sense. You go to bed earlier, you get up earlier. That feels different than if you go to bed late and get up late. So somehow the intelligence of the being just makes all this stuff clear. And you want to go in nature. Sometimes your consciousness becomes more subtle, more finer, and you enjoy nature. You enjoy being at the beach, whereas before maybe you enjoy being at a party or a bar. So the whole frequency starts to change, Okay. My goal. No, I don't have any more goals. I can tell that my working with people is going to grow, especially if I get around to advertising it or making videos or somehow doing that. But the life force is going to have to do that for me, because I don't have an overriding desire to do anything really, because why? I feel like there's like my life's not my life. This is what I feel, So, and as I mentioned at the beginning, something is running this and doing it through this form. I don't need to get too involved with that. It's going to happen anyway, and so. Yeah, I can't say. And even if a goal comes, I can't really take that goal so serious. I can say, oh, there's an appearance that it looks like I'm wanting to do something. But it's not like before. I'd be so excited, like, yeah, I would think that that's really who I am, this self-image. But I can't kid myself like that anymore, because I just can't. I mean, if you see clear, like you see this table, you can't kid yourself into thinking that it's a tree, it's a table. So it's kind of like that, the difference between my self-image and the space that the self-image plays in, it's very clear that there's a difference there.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's something that is very interesting, because when I had my last kind of like samadhi, I realized the person wasn't real. Even though the person wasn't real, there was also an excitement to go share this joy and liberation and peace of that. Hey, this is just a dream, none of this is real. So you don't have to suffer. So I really wanted to go and share that message with other beings, even though there was actually nothing to do and everything was perfect. There was still that individuation of the soul, I guess, that wants to go and do things and tell people and help people and have fun and all this. And then there's that part that's like there's nothing to do. There never was anything to do. Everything is perfect and always was and always will be, and it's eternal.
And they probably couldn't hear you anyway. Couldn't hear you anyway. So somehow when I know what you're saying. I know, especially those who are close to us. I had a girlfriend, and there were moments when we were so connected and she could hear this, and there were other moments where I felt like there was no space for that. But yet I wanted to share. I wanted to share with her so bad, for example. So at some point you realize that, like this, even though it seems like a noble thing, there's so many other factors involved that's going to determine if there's space for this other being to hear this or not. And if there is space, then somehow I automatically meet them anyway, or they automatically will listen to something that I've shared, or that I wrote, or that someone else shared and wrote. And so again, it's like, I can't just, there's a higher intelligence that's running this show, I can't do anything about that, There's beings because I feel I can articulate things pretty good, and I'm still like, I don't know if I'll ever let that go, where I'll be talking to somebody and I'll feel like I really want to share with them some insight or something. And no matter how many different ways I'll share it, or different angles I'll share from, if there's not space for them to hear that, they're not going to hear it. That's just, there's no way around it. In fact, a lot of them will perceive it in the opposite way. If we take something so personal, which is what most of us all do, then we're going to hear it because I'll be amazed. I'll say, but I didn't even say anything close to what you're saying I said. So we can only hear from the level that we're at, and most people won't hear what you say. They're going to hear what their own mind is saying about what you said. You'll say, but I didn't say that. And then even you tell them, say, but I didn't say that. How could you hear that? And then it's like you're short-circuiting them. They can't even go there, And so what to do?
Dude, this is a huge problem I've been running into for many years, and a great man I spoke to recently. He said the exact same thing to me when I was sharing my recent understandings with him. He said, "You can't teach your greatest understanding. Most people aren't ready for it, so you can't really teach it. And what you can do though is figure out where somebody is at and the piece that they need to hear to get them just to that next level. That if you can try and figure out what that is, try and share that, what they specifically need. But your greatest realization, people aren't ready for it, and so just because it may be obvious to you, I really got it that I can't go around sharing the ultimate highest things that I got, because it's just like you can't. He did a really interesting example. He said to me, before you had your big awakening, just let's go back like 6 months, right? So 6 months before that, imagine you tried. Could you go and explain to yourself what that was, what that understanding was? Is there anything you could have done to make yourself understand it? And I was like, no, impossible. Even though it was me just 6 months before, and I was on the path, and I was already. He says, is there anything you could have done? I said, no, not really. So he's just like, well, there you go. So how can you try and get someone else to understand? It's like everyone's on their own little journey, and if you can give them that little piece that they're asking for, that's great. So I try and remember that, even though there is a temptation to be like, it's all a dream, just wake up, you're God, it's okay. Yeah, people have to get there. How they get there. Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. Maybe we said what there was to say. Maybe that was the end. Maybe that was the end. So tell the people out there, if people want to reach out to you, or they want to get your book, or they want to maybe work with you, how can people find you?
You can go to www.onandoffthebeatenpath.org. That's my website, and you'll get my information there. But yeah, I like what you said. It's about finding the combination to one's individual code in the mind, and seeing how to unlock this thing that's seemingly causing them not to let go of something or realize something. And it's not an. You see, you got to be careful with words, because one could think, you guys think you're so high level, and it's not that. It's not. What's funny is, like, if a doctor went to school for 9 or 10 years, or a lawyer or a rocket scientist, somehow they'd be respected. Like someone who hasn't went to school, they're going to believe that they know what they're talking about. They went to school. But yet when it comes to some people who've dedicated their whole life to following this, to trying to realize who they are beyond the body and mind, and who have really spent time not just reading about healing modalities, but actually like experimenting and experiencing, somehow they a lot of times they're not respected, and that's how it goes. This, it's not a big deal. It's like if you got a tree and it's full of apples, they're all not going to get ripe at the same time, but they're all going to get ripe. So yeah, this is the play of life. There's some beings who this life, all they're meant to do is eat, sleep, and drink, and have sex, and maybe have babies. That's it. That's all they're meant to do. There's other beings who, like Yogananda or others, they start meditating at 4 or 5 years old, and then you got everything in between. So, but yet the pure self in all these beings is the same. So it's just it's the game that the consciousness is playing through each individual form. So I just want to say, yeah, I don't have any feeling inside that somehow somebody's higher than someone else, and etc. Only there can appear to be that gap, that difference, but only in time, which doesn't really exist anyway. So yeah. So yeah, on and off the beaten path.org. That's it.
Yeah, that's another one. That's another realization I'm just now kind of have been getting deeper into. But it's hard for me because I really love helping people. Like, I've been helping people for a long time, since around 2008, working with men. And so it's really, there's a big part of me that wants to help. But at the same time, I've noticed I just come up against a brick wall when I'm trying to share certain things with people, and they're just not, like, how many people do I know that just, they have a job and they go there and they come home and they watch TV and that's their life. And I'm like, dude, there's just so much more. Like, read this book or watch this video. Like, you can expand your consciousness and meditate and feel more love and blah, blah, blah. No, they're not. No. Go do a yoga class. No, there's no reason. I'm just going to come home and watch TV and eat the same food and get fatter, and that's it. And I've even had friends who've had, in their mid-30s, like, breakdowns where literally they're just like, what the fuck is the point of all this? And I'm like, oh, good, you're ready now. Great. So here's a book about it, and then 6 months later. So did you read any of those books? No. But you remember that? You had a breakdown, and you thought, what the hell is the point of all this? Blah, blah, blah. Oh, yeah, no, that was just for a couple days. I'm okay now. Are you okay now? Yeah, everything's fine. So anyway, I've just been realizing that it does make me feel better knowing that the self is eternal. Everyone, even their individual soul, is absolutely eternal. And even if somebody, in my perspective, wastes a life where they literally just did nothing but, like, work, pay taxes, and get fat and die, like nothing else happened, that's a life that they needed to have in their development. And maybe they'll have another 100 like that, or absolutely not very much happens from my perspective, but they needed those, and eventually they'll ripen, and then they'll be like, okay, it's time to get cooking. And it's not for you or me or anyone else to judge where someone is at. Somebody might need 10,000 lives of absolute shit show before that 10,001 where they're like, okay, it's time to wake up, and it's not for us to judge that. That's a bitch, though, when your life purpose is to help people wake up. But you just got to accept that everything's okay no matter what. But it's tough.
Yeah, I mean, everything's okay.
Just doing nothing. Just nothing. Go to work, come home, eat a microwave dinner, eat the same fucking shows that you watch every single day. No, don't even necessarily even have a girlfriend. Don't really have much going on. Not much of a soul. Nothing. Just literally work, sleep, and just TV and going to the occasional movie with, like, a buddy. Like, this is most people's reality. Maybe they have one hobby or one thing that they do, and nothing. No greater nothing. No evolution. And I'm just like, how? But for most people, it's fine. I don't get it. You explain it to me. I don't get it. You gotta help me out.
Yeah, that's how it is.
Like,
no, but look.
And they're unhappy. That's the thing. They're not even. It's like if someone's like, no, I'm really happy. Like, I'm really happy. Just, I love my job. I love just hanging out with my buddy, watching movies and eating junk food. And I'm having a great. At least if you're having a great time and there's no spiritual growth, I'd be like, well, at least he's having a good time. Maybe this guy incarnated just to have a great time, and that's all he wants to do. But not even happy. Not even happy. Doing all the motions without any joy, peace, or contentment or happiness, and still nothing to change. Everything's just fine. Explain it to me. I need help.
Okay, so I was gonna explain it, and then he takes the mic, and then I forget, and then he gives it back, and then so I have to remember again. You understand? Okay.
I can rant more while you remember.
No, it's funny. Like I'll start to remember, and then you'll take the mic again. So this time I'm gonna try to remember. Okay. So here, look. The sensitivity levels, you see, are different for beings. Like Like, I always paid the price more, and we can attribute it to previous lives, whatever. But I always paid the price more when I did things that somehow went against my conscious or intuition. And when I was younger, I didn't know why. I was like, I would see others doing stuff that was clearly like not it wasn't beneficial, and also I could tell they felt it was wrong, but somehow they didn't pay a price as much, and I was like, well, this is not fair. Like, what's going on? And so the sensitivity level is different, and the tolerance, as we grow to do things that aren't matching with our inner being, the penalty gets worse and worse and worse, and which makes it easier to do right. And so, see, there's that factor involved. And, some, they just will eat and sleep and have sex and get drunk, and they won't feel anything at all wrong with it, or not yet. You see, it's all like that. Not yet. If we could see the whole string of lives laid out, everything would make sense. It would just make sense. Why does this person kill people? You look at everything. Okay, it makes sense. Oh, why is this person, though, a saint? And you look at all the things that he went through in previous lives to where this is just the unfolding. It's natural. Oh, how does this girl at 4 years old play a piano so good, and the guy who's 50 has been playing his whole life, and she's still better than him? Look at so we can't see all that, because it would kind of ruin the show if we could. All we can see is just this one life, so it makes everything more real and more emotional and exciting and all that. So yeah,
you touched on something there that triggered something in me, but I had it's fascinating. I got a couple of things in my head. Yeah, when people really don't believe in past lives, and I think this is it, this is the one shot, it's so ridiculous, because so many of us come in with such a skill set, in some things, like, it's ridiculous. And somebody said this on this other show I saw, where some beings will they'll go on a spiritual path, they'll sit down, they'll chant once, and they'll hit enlightenment, or they'll just have one thing happen, they'll read a book and they'll get enlightened, and other people will spend 50 years and they won't get anywhere. And it's because, what have you been doing the last 8,000 lifetimes? It does make a difference. And another thing you said that's super true that I've experienced is that the more you get clean on, like, who you are, and you really just drop away from all the ego bullshit, and not even, I guess it's not who you are, it's who, and it's what, it's the consciousness. But as you sort of just get there, it doesn't take much. Like, when you get out of alignment, when you're really in alignment with your being, when you get out, really, you just get that smack real quick, and you feel it. You feel it because when you're completely a disaster, you're just going out and getting hammered and eating shit. You don't fucking notice anything. You're just blah. But when you're awake, you really get it. And I told a story on my on YouTube, I think it was on my second channel, where I took this one action out of ego. There was this one house. This is when I had some of my crypto wealth, and it was the wrong house, and the universe sent me messages like, this isn't the property you should buy. It's not right for you for whatever reason. But the guy had reduced the price, and it was such a good deal. And that ego part of me was like, oh, dude, you get this sick-ass property for such a good deal. So I emailed this guy, and I was like, hey, is it still available? Maybe, I might be able to get the money together. And I sent the email, and I put out to the universe, okay, I'm going to try and get this house. And as soon as I put that intention out, I didn't physically move my body, but literally my sacroiliac went out of alignment, and I literally collapsed on the ground, couldn't walk for about 12 hours, and I was laying on the floor for 2 days. And it was and the universe literally went, oh, you're not listening to all of the signs we sent you? What about this? And so I literally was knocked on my ass directly after making a stupid decision that would have, and I'm very grateful for it, because that would have been the wrong thing for me to do. And so that's an extreme example of something like kind of freaky happening. But there's more and more of those where when you do something that's really not, you really feel it and you're aware of it because you know better. So it's really fascinating. As we get clear and we really start listening to that internal, we can really go to some amazing places if we just stay present and stay conscious with it, and look at the signs and really be conscious. The universe, it's It's a consciousness, just as we're consciousness, but everything around us is also very much alive, and every single person that speaks to us is the universe speaking to us. It's all God talking to God, and so when you really get present to that, the world becomes a very different place. Yeah, it's like a living breathing video game. You know what I mean? It's not a. There's no random anything. Everything is happening exactly as it should. So any last words? Let's wrap this baby up. I'll leave it to you. You're the special guest. You wrap it up.
I just wanted to say, this talk about lifetimes and stuff, you see, the mind can take that and think, oh, maybe I have 100 lifetimes left before I can, start to become more conscious or to heal or work on myself. Because the mind the ego can use all these cards for its own purpose, to make one feel more hopeless and worthless. So I just wanted to say, this message or any other message, if you resonate with this message, if something inside is feeling, moved toward it, then that means that you're also ripe for this, because otherwise you couldn't recognize it. Nothing would respond, or you wouldn't even be watching it, So, yeah, that's all.
What he's saying is you're ripe. Go and take a shower. You stink. Look at you. Later today, I'll also have a shower. So it's been a nice time. We had a nice time chilling, hanging out, and it was good. It was just it was a loiter. It was a nice loiter. That's what I feel it was. And for everybody listening, thanks for being here. We're also on YouTube, and I like to make little extra recordings and put them up on YouTube. So if you haven't checked out the YouTube video version of this, if you look for the Woke as Fuck podcast on YouTube, you will find it. And one plug, I suppose I should say, I'm doing a tour around the world where I'm doing talks called Social Freedom and the Authentic Life. I'm doing them all around the world, and it's good. I talk about how it's important to do whatever you want to do and follow your own heart, regardless of what society or other people think, and how that leads to happiness. So I'm doing that all around the world, and there's going to be a couple of big Infinite Man events happening, one in Europe and one in the western part of North America in 2019. So if you haven't checked out any of that stuff, it's on the Infinite Man Summit website, so it's infinitemansummit.com. So do check it out, and hopefully I'll see some of you beautiful listeners out there in the world somewhere. Thanks a lot to my special guest, Yash. And he seems to know what the hell he's talking about. So if you're there and you've got some health stuff and you're sitting there right now just in a pool of your own vomit and there's blood coming out of you and you feel like you're at your wit's end, maybe you should reach out to him. Just saying. Maybe you should. Maybe even if you're not dying. Maybe if you're actually doing quite well and you still want a bit of a boost, reach out. He seems eager to help. And that's it. It's been another Woke as Fuck podcast. Thanks for hanging out.
Thanks.
Love you guys. Peace.